Hello, and welcome back to another episode of An Unorthodox CEO. I am, as always, Steve Pickering, CEO of Sussex Beds, and today we are joined by Andy Clarke. Woo!
Thank you very much.
Andy Clarke joins us. He's in the room, and he's one of our furniture agents, and we're going to be chatting about how you got into the world of beds and furniture. So yeah, and what led you into this wonderful industry that we find ourselves in?
Chance.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Okay. We'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. We're eager. We're eager. This is going to be a good one. This is good. So you need to stay tuned in. But don't forget, before we go any further, hit that subscribe button so you can catch all future episodes. Yeah. Done. Let's move on. Yes? Yeah. Let's move on. That's that bit over.
Yeah.
The intro's done. Andy, so tell us, how did you find yourself? Now, actually, Andy has quite a unique position because although you're an agent, I've been a rep at times as well.
Yes.
So you've been a rep and an agent. Yeah. But what is especially special about Andy is you've been on the other side as a retailer too.
Started in retail and latterly ran retail. So
in the bed industry. So I think you have a unique perspective from both sides of the fence of how it works.
The man that failed at everything.
No, nobody fails. We all strive and find our way, don't we? There's no such thing as failure. It's just learnings.
It is very much learnings, and I think that's probably something through life. You know, I've always tried to push myself, always tried to do something different, whether that's at a personal level or a business level. And you won't win every battle, but as long as you win a few of them, you get by.
Yeah.
So yes,
yeah, absolutely. Everything's a hurdle, isn't it? You don't. In fact, I think you learn more through your mistakes. You do, than through successes. Yeah,
it was something that I was taught very early on that, you know, if you're not failing, you're not pushing yourself. And I worked for an American company many, many years ago, and they were very keen on not necessarily failure. I mean, obviously, if you did it 3 times, you were having a conversation.
Well,
But, you know, they put us through a lot of courses, and I did one course which I thoroughly enjoyed and still reference now. And the whole point of the course was you can't be successful in business unless you're successful in your personal life. And so the course was built around how do you be successful in living and in achieving? Because I think, especially when you're younger and you're striving for a career, you do become very obsessed with striving for your career and all the other things that are probably more important when you get older, when you realise that you should have spent more time on, you can tend to ignore. And hopefully I'm not guilty of that. You know, hopefully my family would.
So what did you get out of that then? Learning how to be successful?
I think testing yourself constantly. You know, I always try and have a personal project on, and I've done things over the years which you know, I think are not unique, but you know, for someone like me, they're different, and you know, I think there's always room to learn. You know, I think if you can not necessarily finish every day, but I don't really like a lot of the TV that my family likes, and you know, my argument with that is what have you gained from that at the end of 45 minutes of watching young ladies in bikinis and, you know, guys with bodies that you'll never ever achieve? You know, it's not for me. They love it. It's great, you know, if they enjoy it, but it's just not for me. But I'd rather finish a program, and whether I've laughed or whether I've learned from it, I think I've gained something from it. And, you know, and I tend to, I'm not a great sitter arounder, shall we say. You know, I've always I'm sure my wife, if she listens to this, will dispute that. But, you know, over the years we've been married, I've always had something odd going on in the background. And, you know, whether that's fitness, sport, or, you know, at the moment, 3 years ago, we bought an old house that we're renovating, and, you know, incredible skill set you learn, you know, and there's certain things I've learned that I can't do. No. I would forever employ a plasterer.
Really?
Yeah.
See, my thing is plumbing. I don't mind touching anything else, but plumbing, no.
Yeah.
I've had bad experiences.
Yeah.
Where things through pipes and
there are reasons why people have 3-year apprenticeships. And, I think that's probably what I've learned in the last 3 years as well. But again, also YouTube has changed a lot of it because if you've got a problem now, it's on there somewhere, and if you're willing to have a go and maybe do it 3 times, do it, redo it, but you will get there with it. It's whether you willing to do that or whether you pay someone to come in and do it.
I think that's a real key point. I don't think it's ever been easier to learn things. And one of my biggest frustrations is when you get people say, and these words, I haven't been trained. I haven't been taught. And yet it's so easy today to type in to Google, to even AIs now, how do I do this?
Yes, I had a conversation, I can't even remember what it was about, but something my wife said to me, and she said, I can't do that. I said, well, you can do it. She said, well, I can't do it. I said, no, you don't want to do it. Yes. There's a difference between can't do and don't want to do. And, like I say, there are things where you have to accept failure.
Yeah.
I've got a plastering trowel and I've got a Martin, I think it's called, where you hold the plaster on.
Okay.
Anyone wants it, it's there. It's not being used again. But, there are other things that I've done.
To go for the Artex look in the end.
That's right.
Yeah, we don't want a smooth wall.
Yeah, that's how they did it 200 years ago. But, I'm happy to have a go. I'm happy to have a go at most things.
Yes.
And, and I think most things are achievable, and I think that's probably my philosophy, that, you will get there, and you won't always get there the way you thought you were going to get there, but you will get to the end one way or another. And I think that's probably the salesman's logic. There is an answer to everything. And, I always joke that myself and my wife are very different characters.
Yeah.
She comes from an accountancy background. She's very focused and single-minded. And whereas
detailed,
very detailed,
yeah.
Again, totally the opposite to me. And and I'm very much sort of, we'll make it happen. We'll get there.
Really, you say you're not detailed. No,
I don't. Not as good as I should be. Put it that way. Yeah. Well, no, maybe not detailed. I'm willing to deviate. Is probably the main difference.
Yes.
I'm willing to look at something and say, right, it didn't work that way, or it's not going to work this way. How do we get to that? And I think that's probably the nature of what I do. I reference that I'm a salesman, but I don't think in our sort of environment that we really are salesmen. When I deal with you guys, you've got a very clear idea of where you're going as a business. You have a very detailed floor plan, and you stick to it. And I kind of feel my job is to analyse what Sue's doing and not necessarily find the faults, but find the holes, or find something that I can actually introduce to her and say to her, well, look, I actually think this would enhance what you're doing. Yeah. And, if I've got 35 different mattresses, say, in my briefcase, there's no point in showing Sue 34 of them. Sometimes there's no point in showing her 35 of them, but the reason for that is because when I do have the one that I want to show her, I'd like her to actually stop and think, actually he's got something to say, so we'll have a listen. And I think sometimes maybe some buyers are guilty of that fear of being sold to. And I'm kind of very easygoing, and I think just have a look, and it's a yes or a no. I'll try and not show you. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to be in, my time's precious, your time's precious. There's no point in us just coming in and sitting down and discussing what we might be bringing to market, what we've brought to market, which clearly doesn't fit with your business profile. Nobody's gained out of that. But on the times that I do come in, I'd like to be taken seriously. In fairness to you guys, I am. But again, I wouldn't ever ask to take up Sue's time without knowing that I'm coming in for a reason.
For a purpose,
And quite often it leads to a conversation where I didn't expect it to lead to, but it sends me away with ideas or opportunities to work on, to come back and say, well, look, okay, we didn't go anywhere with that, but I hear what you're saying, and does that fit that hole, or what do we need to do with that? And it's a long process, I don't know exactly, but you've got roughly 40 odd bays in your shops, and they're all full.
Yes.
And so it's got to be a good reason for one of them to be moved and changed. And the bigger you get, the harder it's going to be for you guys to change things. You know, it's a big decision to actually decide that a range needs altering or moving on.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so, from our side of the counter, we have to understand that, you know. So where I say I'm a salesman, maybe I'm not.
No.
You know.
Is that what you say? Actually, that's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? When someone says, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
I sell mattresses.
You sell mattresses?
And I say that, and almost for specific reasons.
Yeah.
Because of my insecurities. I find that if you just say that, almost in the response can tell you quite a lot about someone you don't know. You know, because there's that sort of, I don't know, you know, it's not a proper job, you know, it's not highbrow and whatever, and some people will initially patronise you and, oh, do you know, still working in Army Navy, are you? Which is where I started out. And
we do need to get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
This is cool.
You know,
yeah.
But yeah, you know, I've when my eldest son first passed his driving test, we bought him a little £200 Corsa, and again, I used to love driving that around, because when you pulled into anywhere, certain people will judge you immediately by the car you've climbed out of. Yeah. And I just think that just tells you a lot about people before you have any sort of conversation. And so, yeah, like I say, as I said, might be my insecurities, but, you know,
do you know, I get it. It took me a long time. I remember when in 2014, when I took over as head of the business, and it took me a long time to be able to say, what do you do? I'm managing director, CEO. Because I'd say exactly the same. Oh, yeah, sell beds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to actually say, no, I'm CEO of Sussex Beds.
Yeah.
I say it every week now because it's on that bit of paper. But I suppose that's just me. I don't like to look like a, big head or titles or that sort of stuff.
No, I get that, and that's kind of my point. You know, with people judging you. You know, I'd like people to take me as they find me, rather than have a need for me to be something. I don't know. You know, it's an odd thing.
That's interesting. Anyway, we need to go right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
How did you find yourself in the bed industry? Tell us the story of what happened through your life to end up sitting in this room with us.
Oh, how long have you got?
First there was the dinosaurs.
At no point in my life until I ended up in the industry did I think I'd end up in the industry, or, if I'm honest, have a desire to be in the industry. It was a lot of chance. I mean, if you take it right back, I was a typical schoolboy. I wanted to join the army. That was always my thing up until probably very early teens. At one point I even ended up in the careers office and filling out the paperwork, but being obviously too young to be called into the junior leaders. And I think it was probably a good thing. I don't know, I mean, the forces makes you a different person. And, and I'm certainly not that person now. And whether I would have been, I don't know. I suppose you just would if you're a 16, you go in and you go through the process. But I think, looking back, bizarrely, one of the most probably pivotal things career-wise that ever happened to me was going on a skiing holiday when I was about 13. And I come from a little village just outside of Maidstone in Kent, and quite provincial, and certainly in the early 1980s it was, you didn't have social media, you had, I don't know, Smash Hits magazine, and that was your reference for fashion and whatever, and so everything was quite sort of, you did, I think with youth culture used to go out in waves. So when I was younger, you had a period where everyone was a mod. You had a period where everyone got into heavy metal, and and I went on this ski holiday, and we were in it wasn't really a hotel, but a ski lodge, and there was a school there from London, and obviously London's a little bit more on the pulse, or certainly was at the time, and there was a lad in there from the school, and he was probably a couple of years older than me. He was probably 15, coming on 16, and he had this haircut called a wedge. And you're going to have to Google that, everyone. But back in the day, I just remember the reaction of this guy that was fashionable, and especially with my school cohort and whatever, we'd never seen anything like it. And anyway, without rambling on for too long, I came home from the ski holiday, and I withdrew some money from my post office account. Yeah. And I went to a hairdresser's, not a barber's, a hairdresser's, and I spent £15 on a haircut.
Wow, in the 80s.
Yeah, and my dad went mad. I mean, honestly, he worked in a factory that we didn't have any money and whatever, and he just couldn't believe that I hadn't paid £2.50. Nobody pays more than £2.50 for a haircut. It was like really, to the point of being an issue. And but that evening, I wandered up to the local leisure centre, and again, early 80s, you didn't have communication with your mates. You had a phone line in the house or whatever. So everyone met around a bus stop, or we met around the local leisure centre because there was light there and whatever. And anyway, I wandered up there with my new haircut. And a couple of the girls that were in my class at school came over and started chatting, and and one of them just said to me, she said, "Have you got a younger brother called Andy Clarke?"
No.
And I sort of looked, and I said, "Synth, it's me." And she was like, "Oh." And it was genuinely transformative. All of a sudden I came from this horrible, greasy little 13, 14-year-old oik. Yeah. I discovered fashion, and from there I used a place in Maidstone, hairdressers, and I got talking to the owners, and they said, we don't get many young lads that want, because I sort of said, it really intrigued me, I'd love to learn how to do this. And so I got a job as a Saturday boy in a hairdresser's for 2 years. I did that for, and that was going to be my career. That I really, really took to it and loved it, and I enjoyed just the way it was sort of more modern than a lot of things were then, and I mean, we're going back to, I remember when I was working there, Next opened in Maidstone, and it was like, wow, clothes and style and things were difficult to come by. So, but anyway, in my ramblings, I started as a first-year apprentice, and I started with a girl called Jo, who I really liked Jo, and I got on really well with her, and we'd done Saturdays together for 2 years. And for whatever reason, I got really interested in colouring, and I wanted to do hair colouring more than cutting. Yeah. And that at the time was really... which just wasn't available in Maidstone, and you had to go to London to become a specialist colourist. And I got an opportunity through one of the reps that came in, and I don't know if it's still here, but there was a place in Eastbourne called Goldwell's that used to do hair colouring. Yeah. So anyway, they offered me a chance to do an afternoon's course, and I was day released to college, and the afternoon was the afternoon of my college. So I bunked off of college and went on this course. And so I wasn't really bunking off of work. It was probably would have been in the long term more beneficial for me to be there than be at the college. But what I didn't know is I picked the day that everyone decided to bunk off of college that afternoon. Yeah. And I went into work on the Monday, the next morning. And my boss was waiting for me, and they'd had a phone call from the college, and I was on a YTS scheme at the time, £26.25 a week. And the college and the YTS leaders had phoned him up and just said, you've got these apprentice, he hasn't turned up and whatever. And he leathered me in the staff room. I mean, he just tore into me, really. I've never since have I been spoken to by a boss like it. Yeah. And during the conversation and whatever, and naively or whatever to defend myself, I just said, well, Jo went as well. And he stopped and he went, oh, so you want me to speak to Jo about this as well, do you? And he called her into the office, and he did the same to her. And this was like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I remember from 9 o'clock till 5:30, she didn't speak to me. She didn't look at me. She didn't make eye contact. No. And I got on the train going home, and I just felt mortified because I'd let her down more than anything else. Yeah. And I resigned the next morning. Yeah. I went into work and just said, I'm not coming in again. And that was that. And that was the end of my career. So I then from there, the YTS scheme transferred me over to Army and Navy, which was Department Store, House of Fraser. So I went in there. I went into homewares, and again, as I think I've always been an enthusiastic worker. And within a very short space of time, they took me off of the YTS scheme and put me onto their management training scheme, and which is or was, it was a day release to college again, but it was basically, if we're short of staff on a department, the trainee manager goes on there. And so I did all sorts of departments, and I probably enjoyed that period as much as any period I've ever had in my working life. The people I worked with were brilliant. They were funny, and there was always something going on. It was very much like Grace Brothers. There was always some mischief going on, and I did the toy department over Christmas. In the old days, where you had Father Christmas, and you had kids queuing around the corner waiting to go in and see Father Christmas, and then one Saturday, probably a year or so into my 2-year tenure as a management trainee, I was at a mate's house, just watching football and chatting and whatever, and his dad came into the lounge, and the normal sort of thing, oh, you boys, have you got anything better to do, just sitting around doing nothing? Trouble is with the youth of today, and one of those sort of conversations. And he was a manager of a print plant in London. And he said, you youngsters, you don't even want to work, do you? And the same as we say about youngsters now, and it never changes. And
you'll say it in a few years.
Yeah. And he was going on about this job that he was trying to get a apprentice as a machine minder in the print shop. And at one point he said what the money was that he was offering, and we can't get how much? And it was literally double what I was earning. And I said to him, I'll do it. And he went, what? I said, I'll do it. He went, oh, you've got a good job. I said, no, seriously, David. I said, if that's that money, I'll do it. And I don't think the job actually existed. But in fairness, 3 months later, he got in contact and just said, look, the company next door to me are looking for an apprentice, if you want to come up and see them. And it was actually, at the time, it was a much better job than being a machine minder, because obviously a machine minder, you're in a workshop, you're covered in ink, you are doing literally the printing. And this was a job which was called a lithographic repographer, which was converting artwork across to printing plates. And in between the machine, in between me, you then have a plate maker who makes the plate, and then it goes on to the thing. But it was the real high-end skilled part of it, because it was all done photographically. And so you would have to hand cut out masks. So if you wanted, say like yourself sitting there, but you wanted to change the colour of the seat, from a photograph, you blanked it out, cut round a mask with a scalpel, and then by different levels of photography, I could impose you onto another background. And so I did a 3-year apprenticeship in that, and it was phenomenal. It was back in the mid-'80s where you could earn what you liked. I mean, I never left work. I mean, I used to start in Hackney at maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'd get up in the small hours, drive up to Hackney. I think at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I went on to double time. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I went on to triple time. And so I did this apprenticeship, and genuinely, as I qualified, the Apple Mac came into the industry. And everything you could do, you could just do on a screen. And they were big and clunky and whatever. And it didn't appeal to me. They had these, because everything had to be dust-free for the computers. You sat in this little goldfish bowl, and, so I was offered redundancy, and I took it with no real knowledge or idea of what I was going to go on to do. Which is kind of how I ended up here, because when I thought about it, for whatever reason, I remember growing up as a kid, and on our estate, all the posh kids' dads were reps, and my dad had a Viva. They all had brand new Cortina gears and things like that. And I thought, that's a bit of me. So I made my mind up. I wanted to be a rep, but I didn't really know how, why, or what. So I got a job working nights in a warehouse, just picking for grocery stores, and started interviewing, and went through a process of I'm going to say hundreds of interviews, and it was a real difficult thing to break into with no experience. But every now and again at an interview, someone would take me to one side and just say, you're probably not going to get through this, but you've got something about you, and you know, if you just tried a little bit harder on this or polished up on that, and so by the time you get to about your 120th interview, you're pretty well scored on interview technique. And so I interviewed for Horatio Meyer's Comfortable Beds.
Oh my goodness!
And I got through the first stage of the interview, and even then, in fairness, I don't know if you remember Ken Mitchell, the old sales manager at the time.
Yes.
You know, he phoned me up and said, you know, you got through, boy, but you know, get yourself a better suit. You're going to meet Mr. Meyer, you know, and so I went up for the interview with Jonathan, and I didn't realise, but I went into reception, and you know, you're young, you're nervous and whatever, and I'm sitting in reception, and Sheila, I think her name was behind reception, and she was chatting away, and so I was chatting back to her, and then I got called in for Jonathan, and I sat there with Jonathan for quite a while, and one of the things he said to me, he said, you know, well, I see you're working nights, you know, why are you doing that? And I said, well, because I have to have the days free so that I can attend things like this. And we had quite a long conversation about work ethic, and you know, and he said, you know, we as a company, we favour people that are unemployed. He said, we try and do it in the local area. And he said, yeah, if we take on 25 people for the factory, he said, if 6 of them are unemployed, 5 of them won't turn up on the start date. He said, but we won't waver from that. That's the way we are as a company, and we will always try and do that. And then I'd had quite a long period, or maybe 3 or 4 interviews with Rent-A-Kill, and the local area manager, I didn't click with him, and I knew first interview I didn't click with him, but when I met the sales director, I got through 2 or 3 rounds. The sales director actually spoke to me in the reception afterwards, and he said, look, he said, Mark, or whatever his name is, he's probably not going to select you, and it will be his say. He said, but you know, give you a couple of pointers. He said, you don't keep eye contact when you're talking to people. He said, it's really important. He said, you know, so when you go to your next interview, he said, make sure you look at the person that you're talking to. He said, and then when the next person speaks to you, move your head to speak to them and look at them directly. He said, because you answer really well. He said, but you just look a bit nervous. You look a bit like a rabbit. And he said, and the other thing, he said, you know, he said, if you want to be a salesman, he said, why don't you ask us for the job? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he said, look, he said, what we'd have expected, he said, when we asked for have you got any other questions, you know, what we would say to you is, you know, if you haven't got anything to say, then just sort of say, you know, is there anything else you need to know about me? No, we've asked the questions that we want to answer. Okay, are you willing to offer me the job? And and he said,
that is a close.
And he said, and our response to that will be, well, obviously I'm with my colleague, so we will have a discussion afterwards, but we will come back to you. And your response then is to look me in the eye and say, obviously I accept that, but if the decision was yours and yours alone, would you be offering me the job?
Okay.
And that's what I did to Jonathan Meyer.
Did you?
Yeah. And he phoned me back that evening, and he just said, I've never met. He said, I've interviewed hundreds of salesmen. He said, no one's ever done that to me in an interview before. No. He said, and you got the job for 2 reasons. He said, one, Sheila really liked you.
Yes.
And I never understood that, you know, and that's a really good lesson because, you know, when I was junior in department stores, I worked on a carpet department, and I used to have an old rep, he was actually, not an agent, but he used to come in with me, and he always used to wear a blazer, and he always had a packet of boiled sweets in his pocket, and he always came over to me first, and he'd pull out a boiled sweet and he'd give it to me, and I was 17 years old or whatever I was at the time. He'd go, all right, Andy, how much of my stuff have you sold this week? And it became a little bit of a, oh God, Barry's going to come in, I better have done an order for him, you know, and you know, but a lot of the guys would just come in and walk across the department, and Mr. Griggs was the department manager. Is Mr. Griggs in? Yeah, he's in his office. Okay. And they just walk straight past you. And, you know, and those guys, you didn't sell their stuff, you know, and it's learning that sort of, you know, everyone's got a place. Absolutely. And we're all, I always believe that, you know, we're all cogs in the same machinery, and, you know, you're CEO of the company. You know, if I don't speak to you nicely, you'll speak to Sue, and maybe Sue will take a dimmer view of me, or vice versa, you know. But the whole process is that, you know, I try and explain to my factories that we're producing product. we need it to go as smoothly into our customer as we can, and they need it to go as smoothly into their customer as it can.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately everyone wants to get paid, and no one wants to see anyone again until the next purchase is wanted.
Yeah.
And the more smooth we can make that process,
Yes.
the more likely that is. And I think Amazon have a sort of theory about a spinning wheel, don't they? Where the more revolutions you can put on the wheel,
Yeah.
the better your business becomes. And so you keep spinning it and trying harder and spinning and spinning and spinning. And that's all we're all doing, really and truthfully, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
we're all just trying to get to that end consumer's bedroom
Wow.
in a way.
Yeah.
So did that answer how did I end up in the industry?
Yes,
That's how I ended
think
up in
it
the
did.
industry. You know,
Oh, and what a great story.
by default.
So Myers, yeah, and I mean that was a company, wasn't it? It's sadly not really the same thing anymore, is it? But
No,
that was
no.
it.
I mean, they
in the 80s they were just an incredible company.
Well, we had 2 spring units, and we put them together in 50 different ways.
Yeah.
And it literally was just you bought a single decker Bonnell or a double decker Bonnell. That's a spring unit for people that don't know what springs are, but a very basic spring unit.
Yeah.
And we just drove around doing a $2.99 4-drawer or a $3.99 4-drawer.
Yeah.
We even had the price tickets printed, so that we put them in a tent card on your bed.
Yeah.
And you bought 2 beds from me, and you had the double decker or the single decker, and it was that simple. And we took 8 weeks minimum to deliver, so you had to buy stock.
Yeah, we did.
You know, you'd have to buy them in 12s, or you'd just run out of stock.
Yeah.
You know, and even that, you know, when I started out, was almost pre-mobile phones. I mean, there were mobile phones, but they were the
big bricks.
Yeah. And you know, my job used to be get in from work, have an answer machine at home.
Yeah.
Get in from work. You'd write down all the messages on the answer machine, and then the next morning you would aim to be in Horsham or wherever you were pre-9 o'clock. So at 9 o'clock you could find a telephone box, and you'd get in the telephone box and you'd have to call back all your customers and say, oh, you know, you phoned up about such and such, and, you know, yes, it's this. And in London it was always the Yellow Pages. There'd be a ring round around the Yellow Pages, and you could follow it through the Yellow Pages, starting with Doric bedding in Dulwich or whatever, and by the 3rd phone call on your answer machine, someone's doing a ring round, which now is all done on the internet.
It was,
But you know, now in the time we've been in here, someone will have phoned me twice, and you know, I left a message for you, Andy, you haven't replied. Whereas, you know, like I say, 150 years ago when I started, you had to wait for me to get in the phone box tomorrow morning to reply. But that's how quickly communication has changed for us. And you know, and the same with speed of production. You know, I mean, what you order on a Tuesday now from some of your manufacturers will be with you on Thursday. You know, and
again, you're so right. That's where the industry's changed tremendously, isn't it? I mean, we used to have to stock everything. You know, and we had a 30,000 square foot warehouse, and you think how it was quite a small operation at that point. We don't even have that now. You know, it just because it's so quick.
But also to a certain extent, you know, but you know, with Dad, it governed a lot of his buying attitude, and because he felt that he had to be doing volume, because he had this big facility, and he had, I mean, you had 7.5 tonners on the road.
Yeah,
I can't remember
how
many of
I think
them,
we had 5 7.5 tonners. At
you know,
one point.
and you know, that I've got to send out 60 3-foot mattresses every day because the vans won't be full, and you know, that marketplace has changed dramatically. You know, I mean,
we've got Andy who works in our warehouse. He's been with us. It must be close to 40 years. And you know, the guys on our transport now will go, oh my goodness, we've got 10, 11 drops, and he'll turn around and go, well, when I started, it was 26 drops a day. But it was much more condensed. You know, it's all in one small area, whereas today it's so spread out. It's the distance that really, it's not actually the delivery time, it's the distance that's stretched.
The same as my job though, you know, I mean, when I started with Myers, I literally covered Kent, South East London, Surrey and East Sussex. And now, if you take a line from Southampton up to Oxford, across to King's Lynn at the top of East Anglia, but I've probably got no more accounts. I've just got hundreds of miles in between them. And, you know, I used to have 14 calls in Brighton. I can be in and out of Brighton in the morning now. You know, it's, it's the way trades change, and it will change again. I think this year is going to be a tough year. I think for all of us.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think on the manufacturing side, there's overproduction, and there's also overproduction of people making the same stuff. Many companies. Everyone's reluctant to innovate, and I suppose you can argue how easy is it to change a mattress? It's a bag of springs ultimately, so there's only so many things you can do with it. But also, I think we're guilty of being very price-led in this. Certainly on my side of the counter, we'll always want to be £5 cheaper than our competitor, and that's not always the selling. I think maybe for you guys, now, whereas it was quantity and price 20 years ago, you're getting bigger. You need to deal with partners now rather than suppliers, and people that can actually manufacture the volume that you're trying to put in. Because that might sound odd, but a lot of your business is high-end business, and a lot of factories don't have the capacity to make handmade products in the volume that you require them through. So that's a nicer problem, but a different problem that your buying team has to look at who's going to let us down, who's not going to let us down on a logistical and production point of view. Whereas if you're taking thousands of cheap 3-foot mattresses, as I keep saying, they just ram through the production line. Your production time's probably 15 minutes on them, whereas a hand side stitch product, you have 2, 3, maybe 4 hours production time. It's colossally different. But I also think that the marketplace has changed, where the independents that will survive and grow will be, niche is the wrong word, but they will be very focused on their specific customer or demographic, and that tends to be the slightly older, more well-heeled person, the younger person, first-time buyers and whatever, they buy in a different way, and they're not so worried about, well, they don't know that they're not so worried about a good night's sleep.
Yet.
They will learn. They are
yes.
worried about that.
Yes.
But
anyone younger listening, sleep is important. The mattress is the most important bit.
Yeah, and I think it's again, we talk about mattresses and beds and whatever. And one of my customers that's quite successful electronically. They had a large American company contact them about promoting their brand globally. We'll get you 1 million followers in X amount of time, blah. And anyway, in a nutshell, they sent through their criteria and what they wanted to achieve, and the company came back to them and said, we can't help you. There is no interest, there is no appetite for beds online. If you were asleep, overnight we could transform your business. Overnight. But people are not searching for beds, mattresses, they're searching for sleep remedies. And I think, again, as an industry, we don't market ourselves well. People that are searching for sleep, probably one of the main things involved in what they're searching for is a better mattress. But we don't give them an opportunity to swing their problem across to 8 hours of this problem that I've got. I'm on one thing. And how do we make that connection to that side of the general public, where they realise, and we are improving. If we go back to the early days of Sussex Beds with your warehouse and whatever, you're selling pillows now for more money than you would have been selling mattresses for at the time. And you are tapping into that almost basic, you get what you pay for, and most people do know that. But I think one of the things I hear a lot when I go into store, and a customer will walk in and I want a good cheap mattress. And my sort of general response is always, well, which one do you want? We've got both of them. You can have one or the other. But I think, again, back to the Myers days, we've spent so many years as an industry selling on price. And as I said, with Myers, we had a 299, we had a 399. And so then as a retail business, if you run that product and if you advertise that product, you've price pointed before the customer even comes through the door. And realistically, none of us have got any idea of the value of any product that we don't deal with. And
No.
and why should we have?
No,
No.
No, I think that's where we've changed enormously. Is we're not in volume, and in fact, I mean, and it's really difficult as a salesperson. I come from the floor, and you want everything, but actually today. We don't service everything. If you want a budget product, you won't find it in our stores. And there's a reason for that, is because it will not help you get a great night, a quality night's sleep. So we will go from good to upper.
Yeah.
And in fact, all of our products now, it's probably not something we really shout about, but I would sleep on any product that's in our store. Yeah. And if it's not good enough, it wouldn't be in the store. And that's sort of an unwritten rule that we sort of go with. And of course, there's people with lower budgets. But I would rather, and I've said this to consumers on the floor, we can't meet that budget. I would rather you go out and find yourself a decent second-hand mattress than spend that money, because you will not get very good sleep from what you're going to spend on a new one, than do a new one, because you will sleep better, your life will be better, but there's this whole thing is, but it's second-hand, somebody else has been on it. How many hotels have you been in?
Yeah.
How many hotels have you been in? And what happens in there?
Yeah.
And so some of the decent stuff that we have that comes back, you'd be better off doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where we've changed. It's there for a purpose, a quality night's sleep.
And I think that, that in the longer term will resonate. I think if you're strong enough to say no to a sale,
that's hard. It is hard.
It is hard, yeah. But I have to do it on my side of the counter as well. There are times when I have to say to people, I don't think this is the right product for you.
Yeah.
And because I know that in 9 months' time, when it's still sitting there, I'm to blame.
Yeah.
The story will have reversed to, well, you sold that to me. Well, no, I didn't actually. You made a conscious decision to buy that against my advice. And I don't think that's part of my job as well. If I think something's not commercial for the position it's being put into, then, it's not right for me to take the order. Don't get me wrong, I'll take the order, but it will come with a caveat, so that, further down the line that it's your decision. And because good long-term advice is what will keep me in business. People will respect that further, and the same with your customers. They may well go and buy the cheaper mattress,
absolutely,
but they may well 2 years down the line consider the fact that they were given good advice.
Got the budget, then you come and see us.
So I don't think that's a bad way to be.
No, absolutely. So Myers, you're into rep. And as we spoke about earlier, you found yourself then on the other side. How did that happen? So retail?
Retail, I think, was quite literally midlife crisis.
What do you mean you're not even halfway through your life yet?
I sort of reached my late 40s, and I'd always wanted to have my own shop. I think we are a nation of shopkeepers, aren't we? And it always appealed to me. And also I think I'd probably been 20 years getting on for 20 years as an agent by that point. And again, if you keep doing the same things, you almost become stale. You're not driving yourself, and so it's something that I'd been playing with, or not playing with, but considering for a much longer period of time, and having a young family, and just not having the wherewithal to be able to do it, to be perfectly obvious. But I think cruising in towards 50, 48, 49 or whatever, it gets to a point, well, if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. So. I just grasped the nettle and did it, and excuse me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. To be perfectly honest with you, it was hard work. It was probably the hardest 3 years I've ever worked, 7 days a week. full opening hours and delivering after work, anything for a sale, you know, yes, we'll do that. Yes, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And at times, you know, you learn very quickly that you can't say yes to everything and you shouldn't say yes to everything, you know, but initially you do. But I enjoyed dealing with manufacturers, and I really enjoyed dealing with the public on the whole. Not every one of them, but the vast majority, you know, different people, working out how different people react in that environment, you know, trying to ease them into becoming comfortable to even talk to you, you know, which doesn't sound difficult. They've walked into a bed shop that's, you know, they've had to drive to get to, you know, so they've come for a reason, but they don't want to speak to anyone. And, you know, and yeah, once you get beyond that, and, you know, when you get to that point where you're actually signing the documents and everyone's relaxed and jovial, it's a really nice point. There's something really nice about being in retail, and there's some horrible parts of retail and difficult parts. And I always said, you know, prior to opening the shop, I only get the nice times in retail. I get the promotional periods, you know, when shops have special promotion, they may ask you to come in, we need some extra help, would you mind giving us a day or whatever? And you go there and you sell a load of product, and you walk away. It's someone else's problem. The logistics and everything else is someone else's problem. But yeah, running my own business or running my own shop was a great experience. It's made me a much better agent.
Has it?
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, I did come from retail originally, so I wouldn't say I wasn't empathetic.
No.
But, you know, I do really get it now when it's funny, the probably the smaller the shop, the bigger the problem.
Yeah.
Because it's the owner who's having to make the phone call to deal with the fact that you've let them down on delivery and whatever, and it's much more personal. But I get that because I've been there, you know, and knowing on a Thursday night that delivery isn't coming on a Friday and Mrs. Jones is expecting it on a Saturday or whatever the problem is, you know, it's your problem, you know. Whereas bigger stores, they're almost too busy to really get overly worried about those things. I'm not saying they don't deal with them, they do deal with them, but they have a system to deal with them, and that system isn't panic, you know. And so yeah, you know, I do think, and also, you know, like periods at the moment where business is tough. I understand when I go into the independent that he's worried about the rent and rates increases that are coming through, and you know, they're barely making a living at the moment, and they've suddenly got to find another 10-15% from nowhere. And you know, it'll be no different for your business. I'm sure you've got huge increases.
I don't think it's any different for any business. I think this is the problem, isn't it? You look at a bigger business, it's all right for a bigger business or a bigger business, but actually the cost, it's just more zeros, you know, and it's no different a knife edge. That whatever size business you are, it's just there's more zeros on the end of your on the end of your revenue or your turnover. So, but the worries, the fears are just as raw. So, what do you think was what was the biggest challenge in doing your own shop and being in retail? What do you think the biggest thing learning was? Because
cash, learning money,
really, finance,
trying to know where because you know, naively you can have a lot of money at any period, and then the quarter hits, and the rent goes and the VAT goes and everything else goes, and all of a sudden, there's nothing, you know. So I think I was very keen to have processes in place where I never got into that position, because I see it with so many of my stores that are very famine or feast. You know, I mean, a lot of my job is quite reactionary to the current environment. And when I say that, I deal with stores that will order on a Monday if I turn up because they've had a busy weekend. You know, and you know, there's no forward planning to it. And if they've had a bad weekend, what do you want? What are you doing? So, I think that was one thing that I was really keen on, and you know, that was a bit that was hard. The product I knew, you know, I mean, I probably knew as much as I needed to know because I deal with so many different stores. But then, oddly, after 3 years, towards the back end of it, I started feeling very isolated because I didn't know everything that was going on in everyone's business. I didn't know what the marketplace was doing, because it's quite insular being in retail, especially as a one-man band, so to speak. And it amazes me that a lot of my stores don't go to trade shows, even to look, to see what the trends are and whatever, you know. And I still think that's a really important thing to do. You know, you don't have to go and spend money, but I do think you should go and have a look. But
why do you think that's the case? Why would you not?
I think because it's exactly the same as manufacturers. Manufacturers are not very good at marketing and selling, because they're so obsessed with tomorrow's deliveries.
Yes.
That the whole of their raison d'etre is manufacturing.
Yes.
By its very nature, you know, they've got to get that through the production line, to get onto that lorry, to get down to Sussex Beds, to get the lorry back for the next lorry to go.
Yes.
And with, you know, most small independents, there's no forward planning. You know, it's and then so you'll almost make the decision whether you're going to go to the show on the Saturday night for the show opening on the Sunday. So again, if someone goes sick, then you don't go because you haven't got the staff to cover it. Yeah. Or Crystal Palace are playing somebody and you'd rather watch the match, and it's just not high on a priority.
It's quite interesting that, because it's like you were saying earlier about innovation in our industry. Innovation is very, you don't see a lot of innovation, because innovation is risky, isn't it?
Yes, and you know, I remember years ago I worked for a company, and another company bought out a product. I won't name names, and it got a massive distribution.
Yeah,
because it was a little bit different. It was fresh, you know. And I think that's what we forget is that for you as manufacturers, and I say we forget, we're building the same stuff all the time, but it's boring for the guys on the shop floor because nothing's changing, albeit from a sales perspective it's new and fresh to the consumer. It's not new and fresh to the sales staff who have had it for X years or whatever. Anyway, this product came out, and I remember going to the MD at the time and just saying, you know, we need to be doing this, you know, this is it selling, son? I said, well, you know, they've got huge floor distribution, you know, it's appearing everywhere, but is it selling? I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, when you know it is, and you know how much it's selling, come back and see me, and we'll do it. And he said, one thing I've learned in this industry, never be a pioneer. Let someone else do the pioneering. You know, and you know, whether he's, and from a production point of view, he's right, because it's expensive to pioneer. You know, it's and
I guess that's where I'm coming from. It's, you know, to change floor models, to change your display. There's an element of risk. You know what you've got, so it's you know, and it's costly. It's disruptive. But also it's necessary to keep that interest, and to keep that. But, you know, I can see why a small independent is like, oh, that means I've got to clear off that, clear off this. I've got to get new ones in. That's going to cost me to get. Then there's a disruption. No, I just stay here and have what I have. But I think it's a very short-termism, isn't it? It's not very long-term.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have some things that... I'll always try and be as honest as I can get away with being with my customers, you know, and a lot of them are as close to friends as you'll ever get in an industry, and so I think I try and speak as openly as I can. I mean, obviously you can't be rude, but you know, I took some stuff to some guys a few months ago, and you know, stuff that's working in the marketplace is working really well, and they've got nothing like it. And you know, and they didn't come and look at it because they've tried that stuff before and it doesn't work. Not necessarily from my manufacturer, but we've, you know. And the comment was, we're a little bit different to everyone else. Our customers demand brands, and which is a whole nother conversation. And you know, and then someone I was talking to recently, because you know, it's been a challenging start to the year for a lot of people. Certainly February's been a tough month. And you know, and I was talking to someone last week, and hopefully he's not listening because he'll know who he is. But you know, he just said to me, he said, Andy, I don't know what we're doing wrong. You know, he said, we're not doing anything different to what we were doing 10 years ago. And you know, and you know, why is it like this now? And you kind of think, well, you have answered your own question there. You know, you're not doing anything different to what you were doing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, how far has a retail landscape changed in a decade? You know, it's phenomenal. You know, it's harder. It's much harder.
Yes, it is.
But I do think that the guys that work at it and constantly analyse, they'll succeed. You know, they're finding their niches, and there are different niches out there.
Yeah.
But I do think the days of being in a high street, opening the doors and having a range of mattresses from £99 up to £1,000, they've gone.
Yeah.
Because those customers are not coming through the doors. Customers are not coming through the doors. So you've got to have something a little bit better.
Yes.
A tangible story on why the customer should be buying from you. And, you know, as I was saying to someone the other day, a retail experience. You know, a retail, I think, to get money out of people's pockets is, you know, they've got to feel comfortable with the whole environment. And I was talking to a retailer, and, you know, I was just sort of saying to him, you know, I think as retailers now, you have to aim at my wife, you know, and late 50s, mid 50s, sorry, you know, but reasonably discerning, you know, woman who shops at Sainsbury's or Waitrose, you know, and not obsessed with price, and not necessarily obsessed with the product, more everything that goes with the experience of buying the product. And
that is retail, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get so obsessed with the product and lesser around the experience, the emotions, because predominantly people buy on emotion. I like you, I like the company, I like what you're about, your purpose, and you know, the product is just one element. It's all the other bits around it.
And I think, you know, that's one thing that certainly 20 years ago we didn't have to worry about as retailers.
No.
But in the last, should we say post-COVID, but it was before then, but you know, to get people to get out of their armchairs and actually come in and physically see you, you've got to be better than everyone else, because it's too easy for them not to bother.
Yeah, well, otherwise I'll just sit here and do it on a keyboard.
Yeah. You know, I mean, my son works for a car dealership, and you know, I find it really interesting the lengths they go through and the processes they go through to retain and coerce customers back in.
Really?
And I know it's all about finance and PCP deals and whatever. And but you know, maybe that's something as an industry that we're not good at. You know, I mean, I worked years ago for a flooring company, and it was right at the start of the green era, and obviously flooring was all oil-based.
Right.
And the owner is an American company, and the owner was asked to do a speech by Bill Clinton on the renewable credits of the company or whatever, and there were none.
No.
And he literally had what he would call a road to Damascus. You know, sort of. And the company whole ethos changed. But one of the things we came up with, we were selling tens and thousands of metres of carpet tiles to commercial outlets. And I didn't stay there long enough to know whether it ever went through, but we came up with all different ideas. You know, there's wear areas, so you could actually lease a product to them. And but then you'd go in every year and just move the tiles so that you got more of an even wear. And at the end of the 7-year, like a PCP on a car, you know, you then renew your flooring, but you keep this constant, you know. And we've talked about it at certain bedding manufacturers I've been with. You know, maybe that is a way to get people to, if they can find the value in what they're buying, you know, almost lease your mattress, and at the end of a period it's picked up, it's recycled, so you know where it's going to, and a new mattress is delivered. At the moment we're very much honed on price point and the one hit deal.
So do you see that happening or not?
Do I see it happen, or do I see it happening? No, don't see it happening.
Not at all. No.
You know, we're really only just getting to grips with landfill and recycling mattresses, and you know, I think that it may be that legislation forces us down that route eventually, because eventually stuff is going to have to be traceable. And do most manufacturers know what they're... I'm not saying... don't mean do they know what they're putting into their mattresses, but, in 5 years' time, if you went back and referenced a particular mattress, could they tell you what's in it, where that was sourced from? They'd know at the time, because obviously they're purchasing it, but are the records kept? And there may be a time where legislation will force them to... or force us all to know the history of the product, because it can then go back to recycling plants, and that's a whole other subject, isn't it? It's we're getting better at it, but we're not good. We're not nowhere in the industry are we early adopters on anything. We're very much led by societal changes, I think, rather than us pushing forward. So leasing mattresses. Not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
But it's quite a good idea, isn't it? If you think about it, if you're spending, like a BMW, if you're spending several £1,000s on a good quality product, if it appreciates, buy it. If it depreciates, lease it. So, why not? Maybe you could be the first ones.
So, where do you see our industry going in the future? What do you think are the points? I suppose looking around, what do you see in retailers? What do you think they need to do to stay relevant?
That is exactly it, to stay relevant. And I think the way that it will occur is that, as I said earlier, you'll become, not necessarily niche, it's the wrong word, but you'll be higher end, much more service-led, and then the bed-in-the-box boys and the cheap roll-ups will be the educators for you, because people will do that once or twice, and then they'll be in the marketplace for advice, And
you touched on brands.
Brands, I have to be very careful what I say here, don't I? Because I make myself unemployable.
What is a brand? You tell me.
Well, I think
it's like we mentioned Myers. Would you still class them as a brand today?
I think again, that's something that probably within the industry, we are arrogant enough to assume that people know what brands are. They're more, in general, trade brands than they are consumer brands. I think if you go back when manufacturers had the budgets to advertise, there were brands. That's been superseded now by the bed-in-the-box companies that do have the budgets, and they're sort of, if you ask for any brand recognition on a mattress now, it would probably be one of those guys that actually aren't manufacturers. They're marketing companies, but that's where branding has gone within the business as such. And I think better companies have finally come to terms with the fact that they've got a brand, and people visit Sussex Beds, or I won't name anyone else.
I think if you was to ask most people on the street, name a bed brand, they would probably say Dreams, Benson's maybe, or Simba. It would be there, and not really a supplier name, as it was in the past. But I think that's. I suppose when you're talking about years ago, there were 20 visits in Brighton, and I think it was very similar in Hastings. The way to stand out in that local area would have been to have a brand that was...
To paint your building blue and white.
Exactly that. We did do that. But that was the way to... you're the Sleep Easy stockist. You're the Vispring stockist. And that gave you credibility within your local area.
But that was supported by the manufacturers having their own marketing campaigns.
Absolutely.
And generating that... footfall into your store, so there was an importance to it. Whereas, again, we try and produce product more and more competitively. So those budgets have gone out of manufacturing. They don't have the money to do that anymore. No. So then they're relying on you promoting their brand. And then at that point,
it's you that becomes the brand.
And that's where it's sort of swapped over.
Switches over.
And and I think. The large branded companies probably have quite a period of thought ahead of them.
Yes, challenge.
You know, they all make good products.
Yes.
You know, I think when you get to any point in the price, but you know, from you know, a retailer's point of view, that power has potentially swapped over to your side of the market now, and you know, and that goes back to the early days of Myers with the Yellow Pages ring round in South London. You know, we've then progressed on to an internet which has given a national Yellow Pages or shop window, and you know, retailers have been forced to act to protect themselves. You know, and you know, consumers, we're all the same. You know, I mean, I'm not talking badly about anyone. You know, we all go online for something that we don't understand, do a little bit of research, become experts, and then look for the lowest common denominator, or, you know, on price, on who's going to sell it to us for the least money. And yeah, it's not necessarily the way forward. And you know, as I said, we bought an old house and we're renovating it, and we're trying really hard to work with local companies, and it's a really nice experience because you meet ordinary people that are just trying to make a living. You know, there's no sales pitch. You know, it's almost quite, and it has its quirks in that none of them carry diaries.
No.
They never budget in the amount of sugar that they're going to use. I find it incredible that I think our record so far is 7 sugars in a tea. But it is quite nice dealing with those guys because they are just day to day doing their job. You know, there's no sales team coming in and telling you how bad your house is. We know how bad our house is. You know, and I hope to a certain extent, in many ways, that we move back to that. You know, I'd much rather use a local coffee shop than use the large branded ones that we're not referencing. And you know, and that comes down to, we're going to get whole political here, but you know, there's a lot of concern in the way the country's going when, you know, but Sussex Beds, you know, all of us people in the middle, we do pay taxation and we don't get a level playing field, you know, and I think as businesses, all any of us want, we don't want an advantage. No. We just want a fair playing field to fight on, and that's a long way round from own branding, but that's kind of all part of levelling that playing field.
It is,
you know. So
what's the most stressful part of your job as it is now? What do you find the most challenging?
I think challenging would be the fact that you are neither in one camp or the other. You know, I work in between. I work with manufacturers, and every manufacturer that I work for, I adopt the attitude that I'm an employee of theirs. I'm just the agent. That's not the way I focus on it. But I also work with a foot in the camp of the retailers that I'm dealing with, because they're my customers, and if I don't work with their best interests, they won't deal with me in future. And it's a real juggling act, because I do have to have the best interests of the guys, my principals, the guys that I work for.
Absolutely.
And occasionally, you know, I do have to go back to them and just say, no, I think these guys are right on this point, or if we did that, and you know, that's sometimes a difficult conversation, because all of a sudden you're going against me, and it's not going against you. My job is to be able to sit down with you at the end of your financial year and prove that I've improved your business, because if I haven't, I won't be here. You know, someone else will be here. So, you know, I have to have these awkward conversations at times, because that's the way we're going to move forward in, you know, with this particular account, with this particular product. What was the question? I've lost track of my wittering.
What's the most challenging part of your role?
Yeah, I think that's the most challenging part. Just being, you know, being between the two parties. Not taking sides. Trying to see the middle ground. You know, because you know, some manufacturers are unreasonable. And believe it or not, some retailers are unreasonable in their demands. You know, and you know, we all have to accept that. We do all have to make money out of any deal that's put on the table, you know, and I have to make sure that my manufacturers, it's very easy for me to come in and say, yes, we'll do that, yes, we'll do that, yes, we'll do that. But it's not fair on the manufacturer when I go back to them and say, well, I've agreed all of this and you're going to have to swallow it now because that's the deal. And and I think some manufacturers struggle to be open enough with you because you aren't an employee, you are an external contractor as such. I've had comments in the past, but you're outside the tent, so we can't give you that information. And you think, well, I'm actually your main representative. I'm the guy that's managing your business in this given area, and I should actually be the centre pole, not outside of the tent. And another expression that's used is you're just SIM cards, aren't you? You just pay as you go, so that's challenging. And I think also, we work for more than one company.
Yes.
And you have to learn the culture of that company and assimilate to it.
Yeah.
Because most of the people that I work for are successful entrepreneurs, and just by definition, that makes them very focused on their direction and their beliefs, and they've got successful one way.
Yes.
And me coming in as little Andy Clarke and telling him you're doing it all wrong and whatever is only going to end one way. Yeah. So you kind of have to learn all the different cultures, all the different pinch points within the company, and that initially with some companies is challenging, and it can sometimes be consistently challenging. But on the whole, I think we learn to work with each other, and we learn what pushes each other's buttons and doesn't, and hopefully you end up with a successful relationship out of it. And I am awkward to employ at times. I know I am, but it is genuinely for all the right reasons.
Yes.
Because I'm paid on success.
Yes.
So I only get paid if something works.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying something to my principal, it is out of the basic fact that I think I'm going to earn money out of it.
Yes.
And then vice versa, if he's done his costings right, he will earn money out of it.
Yes.
So, I don't, it's not done for any other thing than good intention and doing the job that I'm employed to do, and sometimes we do see things out there that, you may never see if you're just in your factory all the time. And, that's from both retail, me, in between, and manufacturing. Criticism is not necessarily a bad thing. It's we talk about constructive criticism.
Absolutely.
We all learn from it. We all improve, hopefully. And that's certainly how I found things over the years. I've never been perfect. I've never been the best agent out there, but I've always tried. And we have a go, don't we?
We do. What do you do to de-stress?
What do I do
outside of the bed world?
Outside of the bed world, I tend to always have something going on. Over the years, I've always tried to set myself some sort of challenge, and at the moment, it is as basic as the house. Prior to that, I did a lot of long distance running, or long distance plodding, should we say? I used to run a boys' football team up until the age of, took them up to 18, and so I've always tried to keep something on the go. Yeah. I'm quite social. I've got a local pub that I do enjoy, especially for a wind down on a Friday night. Just going there, even just for a couple of hours. And there's a very mixed demographic in there, from farm labourers right the way through to guys that work in the city. But they're all, on a Friday night anyway, I can't speak for them during the week, they're all pretty level, and we've all got the same problems. They're different levels of problems, and different levels of, it's how you perceive but I think when you come away at the end of the Friday, we've all got the same lives, haven't we, but all slightly different, and it's how you react to it. I've still got all my children at home, which if they're listening, is a delight.
Of course they will be.
No, it is. I think, I grew up in a family where it's wrong to say that we didn't get on. We all got on fine, but we were never a close family particularly. And, and I do have a close family, and I go out with my boys, we go to football together, I have a good relationship with my daughter. And as I say, they're all still at home, so they must be taking advantage of my financial subsidising of their life, or they're just comfortable, and hopefully they're just comfortable, and that's the main thing. I think we
and your team of choice. Football. Go and watch
the mighty West Ham. It's been a challenging year this year.
And do you reckon Start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will be touch and go, but I think they will.
Yeah, bit of momentum now, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, that's the beauty of supporting a lesser team. Yeah. It's a roller coaster.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. How are we doing for time? Because I can ramble on forever.
We're good.
We're good.
Should we do some quickfire questions? Are you ready? Yeah?
Let's try.
Okay, right. Okay, quickfire questions. Here we go. Question number 1. Best place you've travelled to for work?
Probably pretty easy, that one, because I had an adventure a long time ago where the company I was working for, we launched in America.
Yeah.
And so I had a few weeks in the southern states of America launching a product with the most bizarre name to the most bizarre company. And I wish it was sort of before the days of really documenting stuff online. We had camera phones, and I've got a couple of pictures of me with, county sheriff or whatever. But I didn't really and I wish now, if I'd gone out there now, I'd go out there and I'd have kept a diary, because every day something happened that made me laugh, just belly laugh, because it was, America's so big, and there's so many of the cliches that would come with it. If I tell you that the product, the company, dare I say it, were called Badcock and More.
Oh.
And the product we released was the Badcock impression. And the president of the company was Wogan Badcock III.
Oh my goodness.
Which is not funny in America.
No,
but never ceased to amuse me, so you'd bowl into these stores and, hi, I'm Andy Clarke, I'm here to introduce the Badcock impression to you, just all these blank faces,
Yeah.
And, but, I remember coming out of Nashville, and I'd hired this tiny little Toyota, and this rig came up behind me, and you just said like that, and I looked in my rear mirror, and all I could see was Jesus. And as it came onto the back of me, and it just had it cut into its grill. And every day something like that happened. It was just almost like, this is the maddest place I've ever been to. I went to a bed shop in the Smoky Mountains, and the 2 guys was in bib and braces on rocking chairs on the veranda of the shop, just rocking backwards and forwards. And I met this guy called Jeff, who was genuinely the biggest person I've ever met in my life, and he had a Coke in his hands that was, 2 hands, and it must have been 1.5, 2 litres of Coke. And you're almost, if you don't know America, which I didn't know America, it was kind of what I expected, but
bigger.
But bigger, and the travelling as well. I'm used to being a territory guy, and you'd sit in your motel in the evening and plan your next day's route, and what was a centimetre on the map, which would be Hastings to Eastbourne to me, was actually Hastings to Birmingham.
Oh my goodness.
And you set off in the morning and think, when am I going to get here? And it just went on forever. But it was a great experience. And I haven't travelled a lot through work, but I've travelled a bit. And again, in furniture, it's generally involved with nice people.
Yes.
Yeah, you always meet pretty decent people along the way, the people you're dealing with. So, but that would be...
No, I agree. And you know what? I think our industry has got better over time. I feel as though, retail to retail is much more open now than it was in the 80s. I felt in the 80s, 90s... there was a lot more scorn about other retailers, whereas today I think it's much more open and friendly. We meet other bed retailers from all over the country at different events now, and it's first name terms, and just seems a lot easier.
Yeah, because I think that, like I said, there were 14 shops in Brighton back in the day, so you were worried about what your next door neighbour was doing.
Obsessed.
Whereas you don't have to be worried about what your next, because you haven't got a next door neighbour, really.
No.
There are certain parts of the market that you either move away from or you fear.
Yeah.
But I think if it's that much of a worry, move away from it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Most of the guys that are left and doing well are running successful businesses, and they are open to learn.
Absolutely.
And I think that exchange of information is something that we are better at. We're not perfect at.
No.
And, going back to the brands, I mean, there used to be the Silent Nightclub, didn't there?
Yeah,
100 best retailers used to get together and, and almost tell Silent Night what to produce.
Yes.
And at the time, they were incredibly successful.
Yes. Yeah.
But, there are some small pockets of buying groups where they have internal cabals where they meet up and discuss manufacturers and product and what's working. But I do think it's still something that we're not great at. And I always say to all of my retailers, Sussex Beds, whoever it is, they're not your enemy. They're not the person you need to fear. They're not the person taking business away from you, and even if you're within the same town, talk to each other because you too have more to fear from external forces than you have to fear from the pair of you trading in the same town.
That's so true.
And, there isn't so much of that now because that high density of independence doesn't exist. But I do think there could be more conversations and, and both parties would benefit from those conversations.
Cool. Question number 2. Here we go. One thing you can't live without.
One thing I can't live without. That's a tough one. I'm not really sure of what the answer would be, but that's sports. I do. We had the weekend, not this weekend, just gone the weekend before, where there was very little rugby on. The Premier League wasn't on because it was FA Cup weekend, and we're in a relegation dogfight at the moment. I'm not worried about cups. I'm just worried about points. And I struggled that. I mean, struggled is a strong word to say, isn't it? But it was a longer weekend.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, one bed or mattress feature you couldn't live without.
Wow. I'm going to say a very small, soft pocket spring. I like a really soft, luxurious bed. One thing we have always been poor at in this industry is confusing support with firmness.
Yes.
And once you get a few thousand pocket springs underneath you, in general, you've got the support, not always, but you can have a lovely feel as well as having a good night's sleep. And I think we are progressing beyond if the medicine doesn't taste bad enough, it's not doing me any good philosophy with mattresses, but we're still not great at it yet. And I think, if people could get their head around spending a reasonable amount of money on a real luxury feel, the one that they get into the shop and go, oh my God, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I sleep on a firm bed.
Yeah.
Just take a chance, I sleep on a cloud. I'm not going to say what it is, but I'm spoiled because we are a bit Princess and the Pea.
We are bed snobs.
And we do get to try an awful lot of stuff.
Yes.
And I think the best I can give you on that would be a very small, soft pocket spring.
Nice. Okay. And fourth and final question: if you weren't in the furniture industry, what would you be doing?
Wow. I mean, there's lots of different answers to that, isn't there, depending on the stage at life and whatever.
Yes.
Originally, I would still be on my little stall asking people whether they've been on their holidays yet. Out of choice.
Hairdressing.
If I had the money, I wouldn't be working, and I would at least take a 3-year hiatus and just travel the world watching cricket and rugby and all the things that I watch on telly. I'd like to actually arrive and go and sit and watch them. And probably if I had the skill base and the ability, I quite admire all the youngsters at the moment that are digital nomads, and they're just travelling the world and earning a living doing one thing or another, whatever it is, online, in coffee shops at 11 o'clock in the morning. And, but I have neither the skills nor the ability to do that. So, there's 3 answers to one question.
That's fine. I'm going to add another one in, actually. Retail or rep agent. Which would you choose now?
Which would I choose now? Goodness. Retail.
Would you? Definitely.
Yeah, I loved retail. I loved having the shop.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And when I closed it, it was not to not continue retailing. It was to find what I would have thought a better site.
Yeah.
I thought what I was doing well and doing right.
Yeah.
But I just thought in a better location, it would have worked better.
Yeah.
And, you know, I came to the end of my lease I gave the keys back about 2 days before we went into the first lockdown.
Oh, blimey.
And I was in negotiations for another unit at the time.
Yeah.
But that kind of stopped it all. And, you know, I'm okay at being an agent and I enjoy it. Yeah. And so I've stuck with it and will stick with it. You know, I won't go back into retail.
No.
But, you know, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, there's huge challenges in retail and it's, you know, with me as an agent, it's a different sort of sell. You know, it's an introduction. It's, you know, you're talking to the converted. You've just got to find...
Slow burn.
Yeah, what they need to do. But that person that walks through your door, whether you've had a flat out Saturday and you've done your week, or whether it's the first person you see and it's 2:00 on a Sunday and you're desperate, they're still putty in your hands. You know, they're down to you. And that the actual feeling of taking someone and advising them, and in a 45-minute period, almost becoming friends with them, and you know, you almost know, because you're going to the most private part of their life, you know, into their inner sanctum, and talking about bedrooms, you know, and that bit where you get the older couple come in and they're looking for a 3-foot bed for their spare room, and you have the uncomfortable conversation where you have to say to the guy, is it for you? And eventually they'll tell you that it is. You say, no, there's no problem. This is what we do. You know, I see people like you every day. Please don't be embarrassed, but please don't buy a cheap bed.
No.
You know, get yourself something that you'll enjoy sleeping on, you know. And, you sort of get a point of achievement. This is a slower burn, you know. I mean, you get periods as an agent where you crack something that you've been working on for months and months and months, and that's a real buzz.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
And to see people's businesses progress, albeit it's harder to see that now because the good guys progress their businesses themselves. Yeah. They don't need little know-it-all like me coming in and telling them how to do it. But,
we should always be open to ideas and thoughts.
Maybe.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much. That's the end of our podcast, Andy.
Thoroughly enjoyable.
It's been brilliant. So
I'll be interested to hear the edit.
As we were.
A little bit apprehensive about it. I think you've had some great guests on. You know, I mean, my son's just starting as a trainee solicitor, and you know, you had your guy on from the law practice the other day, and I've said to him, you know, you've got to listen to that. And I thought the Undertaker was brilliant as well. You know, really different characters. You know, so and also, you know, just getting to know the staff. I've learned so much about you guys that I don't get at a business level, you know. So it's a good project.
Actually, so next week we will be joined by another of our team members that we haven't met yet, which is John James, who's our logistics manager.
Yes.
So I'll be talking about what does the progression through the business. He's started many years ago and how he's progressed, and what it's like being a logistics manager. So a different angle for our team, actually. So that's going to be really cool. And that's it. That's a wrap. So we have new episodes dropping every single Wednesday. So don't forget to tune in. And if you want more unfiltered business talk, you can always find me on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn at an unorthodox CEO. That's it. So if you're listening in the morning and you're waking up, good morning. Stretching out of your Sussex beds. And if you're on your way to school, well, have a good day at school. Having your lunch, eating your lunch. Thank you for listening. And if you're settling back into your Sussex bed to listen to us, then thank you very much and good night. Woo!
Thank you.
That was awesome, Andy.